Welcome back to another web development podcast episode where we help aspiring developers get jobs and junior developers grow. So today we're going to be conquering the topic of how the hell can aspiring developers present themselves on LinkedIn. I'm going to be candid. A lot of developers, aspiring developers, even professional senior developers are horrible at this, right? So we have a lot of skills under our belt that pay us or get us paid quite a bit of money from companies. And so, where'd you go?
I sneezed, friends. I sneezed. So I took myself off cam for a second. Oh my gosh.
Oh, that's fine. I thought you just disconnected. I'm like, all right, I'm going to redo the intro. But we're going to keep going.
You're great.
So essentially, we're going to give you some LinkedIn tips. How to present yourself on LinkedIn, how to network, how to interact. Because everyone says you need a network. You need a network. What the hell does that mean? So I think presentation and networking are going to be our key topics this one. So I invited on Shaily, who has quite a bit of experience helping people, up their presentation skills. And we're going to be focused on essentially people that want to get a job. So anyways, Shaily, welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here. I am friends with a lot of coders and developers and programmers. And I volunteered at DevOps Days in Chicago many years ago. So I love the tech world. Big fan. Glad to be here. Yeah.
Well, okay. So essentially, talk a bit about, like what you're doing, quite frankly, why people should care about your opinion with this topic.
So here's the situation, right? I'm your social media Sherpa. I usually help a lot of businesses, but what I really do for people is I expose and amplify their awesomeness. And that can apply to young students, that can apply to developers, that can apply to solo business owners, that can apply to people who want to be influencers, whatever. It can apply to a lot of different places. I'll give you this story to kind of give you a taste of like the kind of world that I take people through. So I had an intern last year. And she was not a developer, but she was in the PR program and she was doing all this stuff. And I wanted to give back to my interns, kind of like how you give back with this show to help people find their careers and all that kind of stuff. So I do something with all of my clients, no matter what situation they're in, where I kind of expose and amplify their awesomeness. I pull out what makes them special that would help other people see and understand who they are. So we talked. It was, half an hour, 45 minutes. I was just like asking her more questions about the thing that she loved to do. And I would do this with a developer. I do this with a lot of different people. And she says something about, she liked event planning, but she really didn't know what to say in her resume because she was like, well, I never worked full time as an event planner. Like, what can I really say? First off, she didn't validate that she was really good at like event planning. She didn't validate, she didn't think it was valuable information. I'm like, yes, it is. The second thing is that she didn't realize that she had more stories there to illustrate how much she loved events. This one in particular that blew my mind. She said something about her Sweet 16 and she's, was 20 years old or whatever at the time. And she says, I almost liked planning my Sweet 16 more than I even liked going to it. And I was like, wait a second, you loved planning your Sweet 16, maybe even more than you liked attending it? Like, what does that say about you, right? It says that you really love event planning and you love it so much that that became such a highlight for you. And that's something you wanted to take onwards. And I think now she started working at Tribeca Film Festival, I think a year or two after that. I'm like, get it, girl, doing events and all this kind of good stuff. But a lot of times it's not just I code Java or I code whatever. I'm making this up. You have to hold me because I'm not a developer. So you have to hold me accountable to what developers are going to be asking here. But if you can explain the sweet theme that you can bring to a company that is a unique edge in how you do developing or whatever, that's going to make you stand out, whether it's on your LinkedIn profile, or whether you mention it in an interview, whether you mention it to someone who might make an introduction to get you a job. And that's where I come in. I help you extract all this special sauce so that you can boil it to the top and people can see how wonderful you are even before you ever get on an interview with them. Okay.
So are you up for a challenge?
Challenge me. Let's play it. Let's do it. Tell me, because your people. You're their mouthpiece for what they're looking for.
So that's a really interesting thing. The way you basically got her to focus on a specific aspect of that event, which was planning it, right, was more marketable, right? That was hireable potentially. And so that's a big thing. A lot of developers, they're career transitioners, or they have some experience in the background, right? And they don't know how to relate it. So a key thing with giving developers advice is your resume 100% needs to speak to you being a developer and what value you can provide as a developer. So you have to kind of decide, okay, well, what experience actually is relevant? What isn't, right? And so you really have to hone in very quickly, even just with the bullet point of how this specific position that's not even tech related can relate to being a developer. Because most of it's going to be like your projects. It's going to be showcasing your experience, but there's still value in talking about your previous experience. So here's a challenge.
Huge challenge.
I was an aquatic instructor before becoming a developer, right? So it's non-tech related. Their systems were archaic. There was no coding, I promise you. And so, but essentially, I managed a team of like 26 people, 4 different types of positions. And I had to keep the pool running. I had to make the department money. Aquatics specifically was kind of like a financial drain for the YMCA because that's where I worked. But I could encourage through, like, you can get discounts through signing people up through swim lessons, etc., and it would bring tons of membership into the facility. So that's how it kind of compensated that. So I was managing financials, I was managing a program, I was managing staff, etc., but none of it was tech related. How can I relate that essentially to being a developer?
Oh man. Well, okay. I'm going to pretend like I know what being a developer is 100% like, but I'll give you a taste, right? I'm thinking of
Would you like me to give you a quick summary of what a developer is like?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of coding. I'm dating, I'll tell you, back end, my boyfriend's a back end guy, right? So that's in the world of developing, I think. Is that correct?
Yeah, back end development, yeah.
Right. So he's in that world. So I'll tell you this. Right. Like he tells me this all the time. He's like, he doesn't ever want to be a manager. Like that's like his nightmare. But yet here you are, you've managed a team. I assume other developers don't like the management piece of it. So if that's something you liked about your job, which I would ask you, did you like it? Did you love it? What did you like? What do you want to pull in? What would you want to do more? And that might be an aspect you hated, but that's something you can highlight and bring to the top, because I imagine most developers have never done anything like that in their life. Or the financial piece, right? I know some developers do stuff with data, right? Like there's some financial data that you probably had some experience with, knowing what the finances were at the pool. These are just examples I'm making up without having asked you a million other questions. I do also want to add, the girl that I was telling you, the young lady who was my intern, did eventually got a job within like 5 days of me and her having this conversation about her loving to plan her Sweet 16 with an event planner. I was like, you never know what this stuff can happen. When you can explain what you do and bring it to the top, that's so interesting. And maybe here's the other fun thing I'll tell you that is what I tell students all the time. What if you meet somebody who's hiring for the developer job who used to be, I don't know, like a diver or something related to swimming, or maybe they were at the YMCA camp when they were a child, right? There's personal connections that you can make there. And it's all about how you shape the story of what you did there and what you did, which management skills. I'm hearing lots of stuff like that. Keep poking on me though. Tell me more. What are your thoughts? What are your reactions?
Well, I like that. So you mentioned an aspect where like a lot of people's mindset is, what skills did I learn on the job of being an aquatics director will translate into becoming a developer? Yeah. But that last thing that you mentioned is actually something no one thinks about. How can I relate to the interviewer? Maybe that interviewer was a lifeguard. Maybe that interviewer worked at the YMCA before. Yes. And that, like, I'm telling you, that personal connection, because my first developer job, everyone else had a technical interview. I didn't. Right. I was able to relate to my first manager because he did see, I live stream on Twitch. So he saw me code a little bit, but also most of the conversation, I was super nervous in the beginning, but then because he knew I was on Twitch, I was a gamer. And so we just talked video games, like half the interview. Right. Yes! And that created like an awesome connection. And like that, I'm telling you, that interview went better than any other interview I've had.
You're hitting on the biggest thing ever, because I know there's a lot of introverts in this space too. Like the more you have in common, the dumber and the simpler and easier it is to get a conversation started, especially if it feels very awkward being an interview. I always tell business clients, whatever, career seeking clients, like I always say, this is a very Shaily trademark, sprinkle a little personal in there. Tell me you love swimming. Tell me you love to travel. Tell me I had one intern that was a bodybuilder. I'm like, that's interesting. Tell me, the one lady I had many years ago used to do marketing for the Bulls like 20 years ago. And I was like, that's so cool. One lady I worked with studied zoology, but she does interior design. And I'm like, well, who's going to make design that's going to work for your pets? Tell me the details, right? Like there's so many stories. Like I had one lady, this is what we were talking about earlier, where you're connecting your other past experiences to what she was going to do. She went from working and educating in museum education to wanting to be a UX designer, right? So we're in this tech world, right? And I was like, she said the biggest thing that she loved about the museum work is that she can, give an experience to people. She went from teaching in a small classroom, giving experience to 20 people, went to the museum, which was able to give experiences to hundreds of people. But she said that what she loved is like, she wanted to give more people experiences, and she wanted to do that through websites and the internet. And I was like, like, your whole thing is making experiences. Wouldn't you want to hire a UX designer who's all about making experiences for your customers, rather than, I know how to make a website work and I can do the research? That is a very, very different story. And I'm sure every person listening to this has that inside of them. They just don't know to validate it.
I'm just processing.
Oh, your eyes looking at your face.
I think, so it's pretty obvious that, that you've been doing this for a little bit. And I think you're touching on something that, like, it rarely gets said. It's focused on kind of like the driving factor of what you love to do and how you love to help people. And like you said, with the UX, it's about this person that, like, it wasn't even tech related, right? She just loved the idea of creating experiences for people, and that translated into the type of UX designer, UX person that person was going to be. It's not necessarily focused, like, I think sometimes people focus on, like, what technical skills do I need? What, not even technical skills, but like, what kind of skills do I actually need? And you're focused more on what unique part of me is going to make me that kind of like unique UX designer, that unicorn type of position that's actually going to make me stand out.
Yes. I will say, I'm just hearing you say all of this. It's like, you don't want to be a generic person, right? There's a million people who are back-end developers, a million people who are front-end developers, a million people who do all these things. And maybe they all have the same exact, certifications or experience level. Is that if they can imagine you in that role, or they say, oh, I really want your special sauce that Don has to offer, that makes it a very different sales moment for you, because you're selling yourself a little bit, right? It means that you have a lens that you can't just buy with another developer that's just random, right? I always say this with lawyers. So you don't want any lawyer that's going to solve your medical injury case. You want to find a medical lawyer. You don't want to get a divorce lawyer to solve your, employment non-discrimination suit. You want to be the right person for it. And it just adds extra value to what you're doing. And I would say, marry this with what you know about developers, because I can't tell you all this kind of lovely storytelling is going to solve all your technical skills. So let's marry our knowledge together for your audience, right? Because I am not in the shoes of them when it's specifically for developers, but it all comes together. The other thing I'll say that I think is really cool about what you said earlier, you were talking about how the interviewer saw you on Twitch and saw you talking about stuff. The other angle here, and it's not for every single person on here, and I heard you say this on another episode of your show, like, if people are able to, I think it was you and this guy that we were talking about, this developer role, we were mentioning it earlier. I don't know if you or your partner of that show was saying that, oh, if you have the time, if you have the capability, you have the privilege to spend time building a personal brand, it's not a bad thing to do, to specialize, right? Like, people know you are the expert at helping people who are figuring out if they want to be developers and how they can get into the industry. And for someone who maybe wants to be a specific kind of developer, do you have a blog that explains your knowledge? Is it a Twitch channel that says, hey, here's what I think the industry needs to look like, or whatever cool thing, an angle you have that lets people basically have a free interview with you without ever getting on the phone? And I think that's something that people don't consider, is that when they look you up on the internet, if they look you up in particular, right, there's so much content that shows that you're a genius. For a lot of people, it might just be their LinkedIn profile and their reputation, which is not bad, but you can get way more information to your audience by sharing the unique lens that you have on the world, to share how you use your expertise to help a company grow, or whatever developer ROIs might be there, right? And that's a different story. And they're going to look you up and let people get that info before you, so you don't have to sell yourself as much on the phone call, because it's already on the internet to showcase your greatness.
I like that. So
you like that?
And that's the thing. It's like, people talk about creating videos. So everyone, I think, has a different medium they prefer. Like, for me, hate writing text.
Sure.
I absolutely hate writing blog posts. I don't want to write, and I don't respond to a lot of my YouTube comments, but I will engage with people on live streams all day long, right? So, but LinkedIn, it has live streams, it has video, it has images, it has, I'm not a fan of the live stream, first of all. Like,
it's not well done. I'm with you. It's a mess.
But video is pretty powerful on LinkedIn, and even like writing. And so, like, a lot of people get intimidated with this idea of like writing some of their expertise, even sharing about like they're going through a project. Well, what were they even trying to solve with that project, right? And they're intimidated because they're like, I got to write this giant blog post. I don't have time to do with that. I'm coding every day, right? But LinkedIn posts specifically, like they have a cap on characters. Usually it's going to be less than the normal amount of like content on a blog post. And so like it has a lot of different mediums for you to express yourself and give that free interview, like you said. So actually, let's dive into LinkedIn, because I do want to focus on this. What do you have, or what advice do you have for aspiring developers where they can both increase their presentation on LinkedIn or exposure, however you want to word it, and even network? We'll start with like the presentation and exposure and content.
Yes. So everything we just talked about here could be applied towards, look, I'm not a cover letter expert, but you could probably put stories about you and your transferable skills on a cover letter. I hate cover letters, but it is what it is. I haven't had to write one in a long, long time. The other thing I'll say, the story about what your vibe is or what kind of lens you take on the programming world, like that nugget should be in your about section. I think one of the wasted space that people have in general when they're trying to look for a job is that summary section. And they put like, I did XYZ at XYZ company. I did this and I learned this skill. And I'm sure like there's, listen to whoever's telling you to stuff keywords if that's what like the real strategy is for your industry. But like, that also doesn't make me feel like you're a special person. If I'm a company or if I'm a recruiter, I want to know that you're like you said, the unicorn. What'd you call it? The unicorn, it's used a lot. What are you going to do? Yeah. Does the unicorn exist? Whatever. They're rock star developer, whatever. Like that I think is the simplest way to go. And I would say the dumbest mistake that I see, and this can apply for business. With
the summary, are you talking about like under your experience, the summary of the position you just worked at?
Sorry, the about section, I would say first and foremost. So I'm just using yours as an example. Oh, I'm looking at yours. Yours is very short. So can I tell you that feedback? Yours is very short. You have so much room to say things in there. But I actually do love what you said. You said, I help aspiring developers solidify their learning plan and job search strategy. Feel free to book a private 1-hour session with me if you're struggling to get that first position. Oh, how cute. I love that you help people. It's so nice. But like that, right? Like yours is a little more specific, but tell me the story. You have so many more paragraphs. So for the people that are looking for jobs that are listening to this, like I would say, tell me the unique angle in which you take your kind of work. Is there something that you appreciate? Is there something that you think your company benefited from you that was so unique to you? The more specific, the better. I would put a few personal nuggets in there like we talked about earlier, like tell me what you like, if there's any hobbies, any interests, maybe any nerdy things, because I imagine there's a lot of nerdy things in this space. Put a few of those if you feel comfortable. You don't have to share your deepest, darkest secrets, but like you like to cook, mention that. You like to travel, mention that. Some people mention their families. That has to be the right choice for you. So I would say that. The other thing, like I don't know how deep I look into like each position, but like each job, like I'm thinking of for you, like the swim instructor, lifeguard, all of this stuff, like there's a story there, right? So sometimes I tell people like write a little story, give me context for that experience. If you think somebody's going to read that deeply into it, is that priority number one for people? I would say less of a thing. I like I'm looking at you as an example because they're all looking to you as an example. You do such a great job with, you have a beautiful banner image that tells exactly what your deal is. No BS. Advice for aspiring web developers. Amazing. Your listeners who are looking for a job could have some sort of insight there that tells people about who they are. Maybe it shows a picture of them developing. I don't know if that's a little extra for your industry. But I also love that you tell people exactly what you solve in your headline, which for your people who are listening to this, they should do the same thing too. Like, yes, maybe they do Java or whatever. Maybe they do whatever the Python, and I'm inserting buzzwords here, but maybe they do all of that stuff, but you can also frame how you do that kind of work for customers and what it brings to your clients. And there's usually a story there. There's some sort of result. So I would say those are a few nuggets with LinkedIn. And I have other nuggets on networking. I know we're going to dive into that too.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yes. Let's see. I'm looking to see if I have some notes here as well. But thoughts on that so far?
Sure. So I appreciate the feedback. I do. I actually forgot about my about section. So
now you left here with homework.
Apparently I'll put it to do. But like, so what do you think? I guess I'm going to ask a few questions.
Go for it.
What do you think about endorsements? Do you think employers care about that?
I don't from a business perspective, but I don't think so, but I'm also not in the hiring world. So if there's a lot of people saying that it's important, fine. I don't usually worry about it. I mean, I'm just looking at this. I think the only time I get really excited about stuff like that is if I see someone I know who's endorsed somebody that I want to hire, maybe. I don't feel like that's going to be like the most on fire thing. But again, there might be some recruiters who say otherwise. I don't want to speak on their behalf because I am not a recruiter. So I don't know the whole landscape, but I don't think it's that important. The other things I said are more important.
I would agree with you. And so there are several coding boot camps that will actually get students from the coding boot camp to endorse each other with a bunch of skills. And we did that in our coding boot camp. And it felt very like, I feel like hiring managers kind of have the sense that aspiring developers do this now. And it's just like, it's such a low value thing where, I don't know, I'm telling you, the faker you are. So we have a real problem becoming aspiring developers of hiring managers have to go through like hundreds of applications for entry level of, easily over 100 people lying. And they have to distinguish that as quickly as possible. They don't have time to do it. And when you get caught in a lie, when you get caught in like stuff in your endorsements or even lying about the projects, like I've talked to dozens of hiring managers about this, like it puts a bad taste in their mouth and immediately it's like a red flag in the interview. Right. And so stuffing endorsements, it just feels like it's not gonna be worth your time. Yeah.
It's not gonna move the needle as much as other things will.
But like the header, you actually mentioned this idea for the heading banner or header banner, like, do you actually feel like, so you painted this picture of like, put your picture on it and you coding, you mentioned
if you want.
That's, well, so what would be the ideal thing that aspiring developers could do there that is effective?
Well, I really love what you did because you literally like boiled some information to the top. Like if they know visual design, if they know how to use Canva, you could put more information on there of like how you want to be shaped or how you want to be seen. Is that going to be the most, again, on fire thing? I would say the headline and your like about section are probably bigger priority, but I would say having something there where it's showing you off a little bit. If you have pictures, great. I wouldn't say it's super duper urgent to have pictures, but I like how you did it. Like if anybody wants to see Don's LinkedIn profile, it's lovely. No BS advice for aspiring web developer. Okay, great. Like you could say like what your thing is when it comes to whatever type of programming you're involved with. Like I like to, make it, I'm really good at it. Like I have a client right now who's a programmer guy, and he's got a really great skill. He knows how to explain, like he explained GitLab to me a few weeks ago. And I'm not the person that's probably going to be on GitLab very often. He literally explained to me in a matter of like 20 minutes or less how to use GitLab. And now I feel really confident in it. If you're a developer and you're facing, let's say, a non-programmer, non-techie person that you have to interface with, like I'm thinking of like my boyfriend's company, and like he has to talk to people who are like account managers, and account managers and programmers, they don't always speak the same language. And so like if this client I have is very, very good at explaining stuff to non-techies in a way that they can understand. So that's a special sauce that you could highlight for people that like, oh, I'm really good at, explaining programming to mortals or something. I don't know. Like that's something that's really, really valuable for a company, right? Or, I don't know. I don't know how valuable is this 10x developer thing, if that's like old news now. I don't know if it's valuable to companies. Mention it. If it's stupid, let me know, because I don't know. Your space. I saw you nodding your head.
It's kind of stupid.
So it's stupid. So let's say not that. But like, the value is that you have some sort of special angle in which you do the work that you do. And that's what you want to boil to the top, because you're competing against people with the same skills as you. But if you can highlight your specialty in there, maybe that makes it easier for the programmer to be like, or the recruiter to be like, oh, yes, you. What you bring to the table that is unique on top of whatever skills you want to get hired for. That's an idea.
I like
There's a lot of ways to do it.
and so there are a few ways where developers can stand out. One, you mentioned being able to explain technical concepts to non-technical people. That actually
value.
That's a big skill that developers lack. And no matter like what end of the spectrum of like where in the stack you're going to be coding, like that's going to really be valuable. That's going to. So I think a lot of developers, like, again, focus too much on technical, but they are also problem solvers, and they also, the more you can start thinking about the business requirements and like that is going to be super valuable. And other people, the thing is, like, CTO isn't the only person that's kind of like going to influence the hiring process for the engineering team as well. It's like, I remember being interviewed by design, UX, product manager as well, for my first company. And that, like, being able to relate to people of different fields use non-technical jargon, that was huge. Like, it gave me a little bit of a boost. So if you could do that, that's actually fantastic.
Huge. I want to echo what you're saying one more time, is that like there's all these things about like different like how you communicate was one of them. And you said something else about what was the other thing you said that was like a people skill that would make you stronger? You said something brilliant a minute ago.
being able to relate to someone with non-technical jargon?
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's huge, right? Boiling it down, being specific, knowing even how to speak on this stuff. Like I remember, like I do a lot of public speaking and I have some friends who do it too. And this guy was on stage. He told me this story. Like he was on stage with like all these like fancy PhDs who know all this technical stuff that was like very, very specific. And there's 4 of them. And he was kind of like more newer to the space. He didn't have any of the credentials. All 3 of those other people were super boring and not engaging and not interesting. And he got people mobilized, curious, and excited. Who do you think got called back and hired again to do a speaking engagement? The guy that knew how to like make it fun and exciting. That applies for everybody, right? You're the person that's translating all this tech stuff for people who are learning. And you're a perfect example of that, right? You're taking all this stuff that is very hard to find and you're making it easy for people to find on a silver platter, which go you for doing that. But that's what your people can do for themselves too, right? Other weird hack is that your headline on LinkedIn, I hope they didn't get rid of this, but you can actually edit it on your phone and you get way more room to write details on there. Some people don't like the aesthetics of having too many words, but like you can stuff it with potentially what you want people to hire you for, but also what you did, which is tell people what you really solve. And I think that's really, really huge, right? I think that's a fun little hack. I put a lot of information in my LinkedIn profile, but you know what? I don't regret it. But you make your own aesthetic decisions about how you do your profile. But yeah, tell people that story. That's going to make getting that position so much easier. It'll make you extra shiny for the recruiters if you're trying to play that game.
What about the featured section? What do you think developers should put there? So I know you have a creator account, so they're probably unlikely to have a creator account. Let me go see if I can find an example of someone who doesn't have a creator account. It shows up. So you don't have a featured section. Oh, I don't think it. Do you have a featured section if you don't have a premium account? No, I'm not. It's actually been a while. That's a good question.
It might not show. It might just be a creator mode thing, but if I'm wrong, please call me out on it. But I would say you also have the featured section in your experience. Some people could put graphics in there. So within each job position, do you need it? No, but if you really want to get artsy with it, there's free real estate there that could be helpful. That's something to consider. The other thing to keep in mind, you do have past activity. So some of the people listening to this might comment, let's say, on your content, right? And that has the ability to populate to your network. It's like, oh, Don wrote a thoughtful comment. Check it out. So a lot of the last things you engage with will show up in your activity section. And so there's a couple hacks to this. So we were talking a little bit about networking too. But let's say you comment on something that shows you understand something about something technical, right? Potentially people can see that and say, oh, Don knows XYZ thing that's technical. It almost serves you like content. If you comment and engage with other people's stuff, your network will see you. The other thing is looking at the activity section of somebody you want to like impress. Maybe it's a developer or another developer who could hire you. You get that nice commission check for bringing you into their company, or maybe it's a recruiter that you really admire. If you like love and comment on their stuff, especially if they're not the most popular person on LinkedIn, you're going to look like the nicest person in the world, making them feel like a celebrity. I'll give you an example when this kind of happened once. So I did a bunch of workshops. I do a lot of LinkedIn training, especially I love like the young women trying to get into tech. I don't know if I mentioned that to you, but I did a whole thing for GirlCon, which is this like young women's conference for like teenage women who want to do tech in the long run. And I did another workshop for this kind of age group. And I said, like, who do you admire? Who do you wish you can get their attention of? And they said, it'd be so cool if we talked to the founder of House Party, which I think just recently died, unfortunately. But it happened to be a woman CEO. And so these young women were looking up to her as like, wow, she could be a role model. So I looked her up on LinkedIn and she was very popular on there. And then I looked her up on Twitter and I realized she was posting content on a regular basis and not like barely anybody was engaging with her. And I told these young women, I'm like, you could go on Twitter tomorrow, respond to all of her posts and engage with her, make her feel so special when she's dying for attention. And who do you think would have an open door to having a conversation with her, maybe getting introduction for an internship or a position or whatever? And it's funny because all these people maybe are trying to get, people to react to their stuff. And if you're that one nice person, what a great way to make you shine to them for whatever the thing is that you want without having to like ask for a favor or feel like you have to like reach out to someone. It's a great way for you to show up like very friendly in a loving way. Like gratitude is free. Like telling people you appreciate them is free. So if there's anybody who's listening who loves Don, tell him, send him a DM. I'm sure it'll make your day. So that's one other hack about what you can do with the that section of like what content, the activity section. You can't control it necessarily, but it can't hurt.
Let's pause there. That's
a
lot of good advice. So I've been trying to learn about the activity section because, I mean, you can do most recent activity, but I think by default it's sort by top, and top necessarily isn't the most like engaged post necessarily. But like one thing I noticed, I want you to correct me if I'm wrong.
Please.
If someone DMs me or they comment or they engage with my material, their feed, whatever they're doing, has a higher chance of getting like on my front page and getting noticed. So is that true? Because if it's true, you can engage with hiring managers, you can engage with recruiters where that all of a sudden you're at the top of their attention, at the top of their feed. Is that true?
Kind of, because like basically what happens is when you comment on someone else's stuff, it'll show it to your network. And it'll say, oh, Don commented on this. And so that does repopulate on people's feeds sometimes. Especially if you're somebody who doesn't, like I think you mentioned earlier, like if you're stressed out about writing a blog post. So that happens. I don't know if that exactly is what you're talking about.
But I'm actually talking about specifically, like if you engage with their content, LinkedIn will prioritize your content. It's not just like exposing, like I know what you're talking about. Like if someone in your network actually likes it, you can actually see it on the feed that they liked it. But I'm talking about specifically, because I've heard this advice from other people as well. DMs are really powerful, right? If you DM someone that you're connected with, that person will actually see more of your post on their feed if they have that sort by top selected.
Interesting. This is interesting. So the algorithm stuff is tricky. So I coach a group of like 40 or 50 consultants, how to get more clients on LinkedIn through one of my clients. And I always tell them this, like algorithms are important, but algorithms can change. And so maybe this might be an update to the algorithm that I haven't caught on to. I think you and I, as content people, like maybe this for us to worry about it a little bit more is okay. But if we're telling developer friends who are trying to figure out their social media game or their LinkedIn game, I don't want them to get too sucked into the rabbit hole of algorithms. Maybe they learn it from us, but they shouldn't get too deep into it, because if this is an update that I don't know about, like, hey, that's scary. But what I can count on is if my network is there. I know a lot of developers get their jobs through referrals from friends. And if your 20 best programmers are on your list, I don't know. I hope there's women listening to this too. But if your 20 best programmers, 15%, yes, go Don, I love it. But you get your programmer friends, if you have your best 20 or 30 people on there and they see you on a regular basis, they might be able to say, hey, we have a job for you at XYZ company. And that is potentially more valuable than anything. And to give you a little bit of a LinkedIn nugget, right, is when you think about how many people post on LinkedIn, and maybe, I don't know if all the developers need to be posting, but when you think about how many people post on LinkedIn, it's a very, very small population compared to the people who like view stuff on LinkedIn. So if you're like one of the handful of people that post content consistently, there's a very high chance that when someone in your network goes on LinkedIn, even if it's every 2 weeks or so, your content will still boil to the top because so few people in their network are posting regularly. So there's almost this like guarantee that people will see whether they like it or engage with it or not. They're called, people are lurking. So I want people to think about that instead of being super like overwhelmed by the algorithm, because that's something you can't control and it's forever changing. But you can control your network. So if you have good people in your network, they will see your stuff and potentially they will look at your profile. So make it ready for them.
I like that. I mean, even touching on what you just said a while ago with that woman that would just tweet a bunch, wasn't getting tons of engagement.
Yeah.
So developers, so 90% of my audience, when I pulled this a while back, I'll probably want to do a new poll because I'm curious, but 90% of people want to work for themselves eventually. And a lot of people do want to create content, but most people are just scared to. They're scared to get like the type of reaction. They don't know what they're going to get, and they're scared people are going to judge them, etc. And so,
it's real.
But when developers start, like they do make a post about like a new app they created, or they talk about like they like accessibility. They're like, I'm not sure if I'm going to sound stupid, etc. But I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to share my opinions. And then when they get no engagement, you know, as a content creator, it's hard on you. Like, and it takes a while to get used to not like really looking at the analytics, but all these new developers and CTOs and recruiters that are trying to put themselves out there. Yeah. Like you said, when you engage with them, like that brightens up their day. That's huge. And that gets you noticed. And what happens when you engage with managers and developers on the team of the company that you are applying to? Because like one of the first things that companies will do is like before they put their job posting out there, be like, okay, engineers, do you have any friends? Do you know anyone that we can hire? Do you have any personal recommendations? That's one of the first things they do before they even put that job posting out there, usually, or they'll kind of pair it at the same time. But what happens when you've been engaging with people on that team and they do put that job posting out there? Or do you think like engaging with people on LinkedIn is a good strategy, even if you do put your resume in? Like, is that worth your time to engage with people on the team if you're trying to apply to a company?
Oh my gosh, I would hope so. Again, not a recruiter here, but like the more relationships you have, the better. What do they say? Like most jobs never get posted, right? But also too, I know this industry gets a lot from recruiters. I think that's like a big funnel of positions. But yeah, if you have friends, like you want your friends to know what you're looking for. You want your friends to see you regularly as being awesome. Now, granted, I hear from developers that they really hate LinkedIn because of the amount of recruiters that harass them. So I know that's like a thing.
Not for aspiring developers. Recruiters usually don't reach out to new developers.
So you got to make yourself look like you're a shining example. Actually, can I give you an example of somebody wonderful that maybe she might, if you're like, maybe she'll get on your show because she could be a really interesting person for you. One of my longest, dearest friends, Dashel Barka, she's all over Twitter. I think 10.3K followers. I don't know how she's doing this. What she did, she was not a developer, but she loves lucid dreaming. Like that is her passion. One of her passion things. She's trying to build a tool for lucid dreaming. And originally she's like, well, I need coding. So she's like, well, I should just hire someone to code for me. And then she got so frustrated with like all the stuff that she started to figure out how to program so that she could make this device. And so, in the like while she was studying to learn this, she was doing like, I don't know if you've heard of build in public, I think is the hashtag on Twitter, where I guess you can watch people build their technology from scratch and you can see their whole progression. But she publicly showed how she was learning to code. She did like 100 days of code challenge, right? Like that's an easy piece of content for people to showcase like what you're learning every single day. Like if I'm going to hire like a newbie developer, like somebody who's that determined to take this extra work on, granted, not everyone has the time to, like that says a lot about who you are. So what she did, she built in public and now she knows all this programming stuff and she essentially built her own like wish list service called Wish Tender. And she just broke 15K in revenue this month, in profits, like straight up profits. And it's just her and her partner then like that, she's married to, like, that's it. Him and her like running the whole thing, but she basically started and does all the coding and she's built this thing from zero. It's absolutely mind blowing because she also, like many of your listeners, were starting from zero. Did she ever take a boot camp? No, but she like studied like crazy all over the internet. She's a great story. Maybe I'll tell her. I'm like, hey, meet Don. But she did a lot of that stuff and she made a lot of friends through one-on-one DMs to build up her product. And you could potentially do that with potential people who might hire you, right? If you can be kind to them. If you can give context to why you're reaching out to them. I know some people don't love the vague messages. Huge. Make it feel like you wrote it for them. I think a lot of people will copy and paste like, hey, I want to get a job at your company. Like, I don't know. Tell them what you can do for them. See where you can be helpful for them. Engage with their content. Like that's
okay. I gotta pause. I gotta rant. So
rant,
right there,
do it. What do you think?
Advice, the number of aspiring developers that they'll just post that message like, hey, so actually I'll start with me. People will DM me saying, hey, can you help me find a job? Like, what? Who the fuck are you? Like, I don't know you. You know how many DMs I get as I grow my content? Like, why should I help you get a job when, like I've connected and engaged with so many people? And I know that's really hard to hear, but like, I think developers, especially aspiring developers, need to get into the habit of like, well, what value can I provide? Even if it's just like, hey, I saw your LinkedIn post. Like, I know you kind of have a controversial opinion about accessibility, but like, I actually vibe with that. I appreciate you posting that, right? So even if it's just relating and like giving people some sort of validation, that's the value you provide. That's way different than, hey, I want a job at your company. Can you get me hired? And I'm telling you, so many people will type that message. So many people will type that really basic, bare bones message of you do something for me, even though you don't know me.
Huge. And I'm going to pick a bone with your audience potentially if they're doing this to you because, or not your audience, if random strangers are doing this to you, it breaks my heart because you give away so much content on the internet that like people can like get so many answers without ever having talked to you. And you also make it really accessible because you have a link to say, hey, like purchase a session with me, right? Like how generous is that you're willing to give up your time to help these people because you love it and you're passionate about it. Like That's huge. I'll give you an example from my world. Like I have a blog on my, and I would probably add this show to it as well, where I literally, like, people are like, oh, what do I do for my career? Or like a friend will hit me up and they're like, Shaily, I need help with LinkedIn. And like, they're not necessarily like, you know, they're not ready to book a session or anything like that, but I really want to help people. And I can't obviously scale my time. I can't be there for everybody. So I made a collection of all of my tips for LinkedIn and all these resources. And I put it on my
That's awesome.
Your Social Media Sherpa blog that has all these videos and stuff where you can watch me give LinkedIn trainings to other institutions, and you could literally watch that content. And it's as if you talk to me, right? And if you want to go further, like, you know, you give me a call and we'll see what I can do for career people. But like, they have you, they should call you, right? Like you have probably stuff like, hey, you know, check this content out first. If you really care about these people and you have the time, here's this resource. Here's all my tips. You know, one of the things that also bothers me, it happened at a networking event where this guy knew like I was good at social media, and he like hit me up and he's like, oh yeah, you know, I'd love to partner with you and learn from you, and I'd love you to mentor me. And I'm like, who the F are you? And I had sent him this exact link with all of this information that was going to help him. And I'm like, you know, before he should have said anything to me, he should have at least shown me that he at least tried to take some of the free advice I gave him before he hit me up, right? And it's just like you said, like if they like something that you posted about, you know, boost someone's ego a little bit. It doesn't cost you much, but it'll make people so much more receptive to making connections for you. And like I said earlier, they're invested because potentially maybe they'll get a referral bonus. I don't know if it's the same for new developers, but like if they bring you in and they hire you, they might be a perk for them. So make it easier for them to feel like you're a nice person that is worth their time. So absolutely huge. Oh, here's another hack. I didn't even mention this. If you have any mutual contacts with people that you want to impress, use that in your intro message, right? If we have any, like I see people that like I've met over the years who follow you, and I'm like, oh, that gives me more context of who you are. If all these cool people are following you, oh my gosh, this guy must be amazing. I believe it. You're fabulous. That's also a nice little hack to keep in mind.
I like that.
Right?
I so just processing.
I'm looking at your face. I love it. I love it.
I feel like a lot of aspiring developers, again, this kind of goes back to a lot of aspiring developers can do really great things in the world. And the way a lot, especially when you kind of start getting into this logical mindset, you start trying to identify problems in the world and how you're going to solve that through technology. That is a very, very marketable and paid skill. And it's so powerful. And I love that developers are starting to value themselves more. But the problem is, a lot of people are... Companies don't want developers that are just code monkeys anymore, that just sit there and code. They want people that actually help the business identify problems, help identify bugs in your code, or how features are going to negatively impact users beforehand. And like even the way that aspiring developers will approach other people, it often shows that they have a long way to go to improve their soft skills. And that's okay. I am someone that like had to really work at this. It's something I still work with, but like,
Same.
I think a lot of aspiring developers, I don't know if they don't really value it as much. They don't think it's going to be effective, but like even the way you engage with people on LinkedIn, on social platforms, like really practicing that, really focus on like active listening when you're talking with people, and like just the type of engagement, you're almost training yourself to be this developer that everyone wants to work with, not this brilliant developer that can solve, the toughest algorithm, right? Like there are so many developers that can do that already. You want to be a developer that people want to engage and work with, and you want to be the developer that listens to other people, and like you can demonstrate that even just with your initial engagement with people.
Huge. So huge. Like there's so many aspects of oneself that goes beyond the coding. And if you're competing against thousands of people who are new devs, showing that story or that taste or that ambition or your background and how that relates to what you can do for somebody, huge. How your world mission relates to tech, maybe, right? Like I love every time I see, like, I hate that this is real, but like, diversity and like getting women in tech is so minimal. But if you have a story like, one of the students that came to one of my trainings, like she has a whole organization that's trying to empower young women to get into tech, and she volunteers her time doing that. I'm like, what a great story to share, right? If anything, you know what? This is the side nugget. Tell me if this is relevant to your people. There are so many places where you can volunteer if you have the time to do it, to volunteer and help kids learn how to code. And somebody who's new to coding could probably be a great person for that. I think they even pay people to do that. So keep that in mind.
When I was starting out, Yeah, sometimes. So with traditional education, usually, so I had like colleges and schools reach out to me when I was just starting to build an audience. But I think a lot of traditional education, they really, they're behind on times. Their curriculum is usually old. And so it's great that if you can come in and educate, but they also will try to validate the value that you can bring based on, like, you need to be a professional developer with this type of college degree and this. So that's the issue with it. But if you do build an audience, you can get past that. If you can build an audience, that's also another form of proof, social proof, that you can provide value. So there are tons of programs where schools are craving people to volunteer their time to come into schools, and especially schools that really don't have strong technical programs or introduce technical careers. You can be that person that provides that exposure for that school that just didn't have a good program to be able to do that.
Yeah. And I think especially in the world, like, I'm a millennial, we love mission-driven things. Like, if you can go into an interview saying, hey, like, I really care about the future of programming. And if somebody else is just like, I left a boot camp last week and I'm living the fantasy of, like, I'm going to instantly get a job, but you're not, like, but if you have that extra volunteer experience, it helps a ton. Like, I know from, like, General Assembly, I was a case study project for UX students, and it was the most amazing experience. And one of the students had, like, the student that had really great educational background, who loved writing and who, like, really wanted to learn UX. I was like, great. And they were passionate, and they were the only person in the group to, like, reach out and say, like, hey, like, do you need more help outside of the program? And I hired her, and I said, hey, yes. But that gave her paid experience to, like, doing the job that she wanted to get. And actually her and then another group member from that same team, I was both their person, what do they call, reference call for their jobs. And both of them, now granted, they're both amazing, but I think I put a little cherry on top when I said amazing things about them, because I'd worked with both of them and they were absolutely wonderful. But it was more than just, I was a case study project. It was like, they really went above and beyond to help me. And I was able to hire one of them afterwards. And it was great. Like, there's, if you showcase, what you can do for someone, you give them the possibilities. If you can open up the possibilities for someone who wants to hire you beyond, hey, I have XYZ skill, like, that's magical. I have XYZ skill and I can communicate well. I have XYZ skill and I used to work in customer service when I was in high school. Like, I don't know, I'm making this up, but, like, that can make a huge difference depending on the kind of company and the company culture that you're buying into. Don't be generic.
I like that. I think we really honed in. Yeah, because I don't even know what I'm going to title this now. I'll figure that out. But I think we really honed in more on the mindset that we essentially honed in on presentations. We expanded a little bit past LinkedIn, but I think the idea of being able to relate who you are, your previous experience, and what makes you unique, bringing that into being a developer, that's what's going to make you stand out among hundreds of applicants of every single entry position. The one thing, oh shoot, okay. So we have about 6 minutes left. I want to be cautious of our time.
I'm flexible. Do what you got to do. This is a great show.
I feel like I want to ask one more question, and then, feel free to share any feedback that you haven't shared yet so far. So,
okay.
I'm a big proponent that I always advocate for developers to create content. You had mentioned this story of, your person that she essentially was into lucid dreaming. She eventually wanted to build an app. She shared her coding story through 100 Days of Code, which I'm actually going to caution people, like, take a break. Please. Don't do 100 days straight. I'm telling you, you're going to drive yourself nuts. But, like, the idea of, like, being consistent and marking on your calendar, I'm going to do it like that's 5 days a week or something like that, and take the weekend off. That's huge.
I like that.
But anyways, sharing your story, again, that's what helped me, or sharing your live coding experience, sharing how you're growing as a developer. That's what helped me skip my technical interview for my first job. But I do think algorithm type tips could help content creators. Can you share any tips you know of with the LinkedIn algorithm? Like, for example, would it make more sense to write out a post, or would it make more sense to create a video about your experience?
Ooh, I'll say this. Either route, this is a big thing. Actually, this is a technical nugget that would help people. This goes with your profile and it goes with your content. With your profile, there is a summary section, right? what happens is LinkedIn only shows you like the first like 2 lines, and you have to click see more if you want to read the rest of it. I'm sure it's like some sort of data capture or something to see how engaged your profile is. But the same thing goes for your content. They'll only show you the first 2 lines, and maybe they'll show you the like intro graphic of your video if it's a video. If you don't hook people and tell them why they should give their minutes of their time to watching the video, no one's going to read it. For example, like I'll see podcast hosts doing episode 23 with Shaily. I'm not a celebrity. They don't know who Shaily is. Maybe they do. I don't know. But they don't know who I am. I'm not a mega star. What does episode 23 mean to me? Nothing. Like, but if you say, hey, be unforgettable in 100 days, wait, I want to learn about being unforgettable in 100 days. Like, that's a very different title. That's a very different description. So I would say making the cream go to the top is huge, because if nobody clicks see more, it tells LinkedIn algorithm that maybe people don't want to read this article. So you want people to want to click and continue the text so that they read more. I, like you, I love live streaming. It's my favorite medium. Unfortunately, I wanted to be a LinkedIn Live person, but I really, again, like you, I don't love the technology that they've put to it, but I'm glad it's there. They're working on it. I miss Periscope. Bring it back. Whatever. I used to love Periscope. But like, yeah, videos do well. Like, videos are doing well right now. I think it changes all the time. Text graphics don't always do well. One thing I would say is you don't want to post something that takes people off the platform. And if you do, like the LinkedIn algorithm, like LinkedIn wants you to be obsessed with LinkedIn. They don't want you to leave. So if you post a YouTube video or an external link, that also doesn't help. Like, I've seen people post their portfolios or whatever. I'm like, that's fine. But like, if you can put it in a comment and say, hey, click here for my portfolio, maybe that's a little better on the algorithm. But you want people to click see more. You want people to click the play button. You want people to be hooked. So if you just start rambling, be like, hi, I'm Shaily, and here's what I have to say today. It's probably you know YouTube really well. Like, you don't start with like, hello, my name is, you want to hook people. So whether it's the text or the video, if you hook people and people say, hey, I want to keep reading it, that's going to tell the algorithm, hey, this person's rocking it. I also like, right now I'm liking posting on Tuesday mornings on my schedule, like East or Central Time, like 8-ish, 9-ish, 10-ish. Can that change? Yes. But I would say the reason why is like I said earlier in the show, because I'm one of the few people in my network that consistently posts on LinkedIn, like they will see my content when they sign on to LinkedIn. It's a very high percentage chance. And so like when I post, what was I going to say? They're going to see my stuff, and I don't even know where I was going with this. I don't know where I was going with this, but they'll see my stuff and it'll show up. So just know it has longevity, right? So when I post on a Tuesday, like people are still on LinkedIn on Wednesday, on Thursday, on Friday. If I post on like a Friday afternoon, if I don't get engagement within the first, 5 or 6 hours, like it's probably going to be dead because it's the weekend. So the earlier in the week, I think sometimes helps. But again, you don't have to post a million times, but if a recruiter is looking through your profile, or not a recruiter, somebody that might want to hire you, looks through your profile, like that kind of feed might help them get more context for who you are. So, and you can apply that same content to your website or other places too. So maybe even on the resume, check out my LinkedIn post. I don't know. Tell people where you want them to look, right?
So that's actually really important. So I see people that will post, they'll post an article, or they'll kind of talk about like something they just created or a project. They'll link to their GitHub, their YouTube video. Yeah. But they do it on the post themselves. You basically said like the key thing, every single platform, it's not just LinkedIn. They want you to stay on their platform. So you mentioned the idea of posting a comment instead, where the actual main post will probably get more engagement because people are going to stick there, and then it won't take that post away just because they clicked on the comment, or...
It's like less, like LinkedIn is less annoyed with it because it's in the comment. Like, hey, if you want the link, go to the comment. Or one thing that I started to do is like, like I give away like a collection of all of my favorite LinkedIn profiles. It has the bottom of the list has a lot of career seeker ones, for example, especially like career, like women trying to get into tech. So there's some good inspiration for your people. But I tell people, hey, go to your social media Sherpa, and I sometimes write the word .com, and then I say, go to this section and you'll find the way to sign up, so that I'm not putting a link outwards. Now, LinkedIn might get more creative with this. So I saw like one of these algorithm obsessed people, again, be careful with getting too in the rabbit hole here of algorithms. And he said like, oh, if you comment on if you're the first person to comment on your own post, that also might hurt you. And I was like, oh, I don't like that. So sometimes I waited for someone else to comment and then I'll add my comment. But I'm like, so like, I have gone insane overthinking this, and I don't want that same
right.
psychotic
That's
thought
for us to go
happen
insane
to your
over.
people. Like maybe like we are content people, maybe we spend some time on it, but you have to remember the right people.
Yeah.
It's like, this is what I tell all my clients, the right people, the right information, if you can put them together, which for a lot of these people, your network's on LinkedIn, if you can tell them some of your programming stuff, things you've built, how you got excited. Oh my gosh, the dumbest thing they should put on your profile, maybe this is for you too. How did you get into programming? Why did you go down this route? What do you love about it? Like that will give people so much context. What do you wish the programming world understood that you get? Like these are all such juicy things that if you can make it easy for someone to hear that story from you, oh my gosh, there's a chance to say like, yeah, I want to talk to them, right? Just like you stack the deck with all this content that made you skip your technical interview, they should stack the deck with insights that'll make them look like the shining developer that this company is dreaming to hire.
I like it.
So this is some nuggets for you. Oh my gosh, yes. So, and look, if your people want to follow me on LinkedIn, they can totally do that. And you never know, I might throw a nugget their way. Like, who knows? So
no, seriously. I mean, this was even helpful for me. And I think,
good.
I think more people are interested in these kind of tips than you realize. But like you said, you got to be careful of what you focus on and going down that rabbit hole. Yes. Because even for content creators, we need to be careful of it because a lot of it's ineffective, even just because it starts affecting our mental health and et cetera. And we got to look out for that. So, but like, as far as a lot of the LinkedIn tips, advice, I think, so the big thing is, and I'm just going to be blunt about this.
Please.
LinkedIn tends to, LinkedIn has a lot of fake posts and inauthenticity, and it almost feels, like basically putting your own dog down a well and videotaping it getting rescued. And like, I think a lot of people don't believe a lot of these stories. They sound so made up, and it's pushed so many people away from LinkedIn where like, and I can tell you, I've talked to my audience about it. You trim your feed, get rid of people like that like
that was the best tip. Yeah.
Focus on your mental health. I'm telling you, I probably get rid of about, and now I'm going big time, like at least 50 people a week. I'm eliminating my connections. And so just because I used to add people all the time and I'm just trying to trim it, my feed is so much better now. And then the LinkedIn platform for people that like are tired of this, inauthenticity and just people are posting for likes. You can start you're going to find that like if you connect with the right people, you're going to start getting the engagement that you want for your authentic content, for your content that actually provides value and provides a lot of substance. Like there are tons of people on LinkedIn where like they are also tired of that and they're just kind of just sharing their story. They're not trying to be fake about it. They're not trying to get likes. So connect with people that, are going to emulate that style of LinkedIn that you want to see. It's actually pretty huge.
This is everything. If you're a good like human that's normal and competent and kind, there's other normal, competent and kind humans that you can connect with. And if those, if your 500 connections are all really nice, good people, those are the 500 people that are going to see you every time you show up. And those people matter. And that's the magic of LinkedIn. You can get the right people to see the right information from you. It's going to maybe make their life better and make your life better too. Cha-ching.
Yeah. 100%.
Yes. Oh, brilliant. So brilliant. So you're wonderful.
That's pretty much it. I feel like it's a lot of good advice. I really appreciate you coming on, but I definitely want to give you an opportunity to share all your stuff. So if people want to reach out to you, anything else, any services you're offering.
Oh my gosh. So yoursocialmediasherpa.com. One of the things that I really loved about doing this today is I love coming into companies, to schools, to institutions, to talk about how to be unforgettable on LinkedIn and how to really showcase what makes you special on the internet. So that's something I love. So if there's anybody in the audience that wants me to like do a little bit of what I did here with their community, I'd love to come visit your institution and do a training. That's one thing. The other thing I mentioned earlier is I have a collection of all of my favorite LinkedIn profiles. I just keep adding to it randomly whenever I see someone doing something cool. And so if you go to yoursocialmediasherpa.com, you'll see a bunch of pop-ups that say, get my favorite LinkedIn profiles. And you will get my favorite LinkedIn profiles, and you'll get really, really easy social media tips to your inbox every other week. Stay as little or as long as you want. They're a little bit business themed, but they should be able to apply for developers too if you get creative. Also, what else? I do have another video video. I have these things I call like hacks for sale in my shop on my website, and they're pre-recorded videos where I give all my tips and tricks. There's one that's specifically on LinkedIn. It's a little more businessy focused, but it'll have more of these like algorithmy things, how to write posts, all this kind of stuff. So you can purchase that on there. And I usually tell people if they have questions after they sign up for one of these things, I'm happy to like DM them on LinkedIn and answer a few questions for them. So they're not totally stuck there with something they're like, oh my gosh, about. But like I told you, there's tons of videos of me talking about LinkedIn tips and tricks and stuff on my YouTube channel, on that blog about how to like do networking and LinkedIn. There's tons of videos on this topic. So I'm not a stranger. You can find me on the interwebs and beyond to keep cheering you on. So that's Shaily Hakimian at yoursocialmediasherpa.com. Okay, shtick complete, but it's fun.
Love it. A lot of good energy from you.
Oh, I love it. You too. I love what you're doing, and people need this support. And I even did a podcast with some UX students who are in this struggle that I'm sure you have survived and your people are in right now. And it's a tough thing, right? These schools, these boot camps, they want you to get that career. They're dangling this very lucrative business for people, but they don't always hand you to the place in which you can get the position. So it's people like you that are helping them bridge the gap from their schools and institutions to where they're going to go in their career. So I commend you for it. So keep up the good.
I appreciate the kind words. I do.
Yes.
Let us know what you thought about the comments. I feel like there's a lot of depth to even just engaging with the developer community in general. We talked a lot about presentation, etc. So if you're on YouTube, let me know what you thought about these tips. Have you tried them? Do they not work? Do they work? But also, if you want to hear any other tips, definitely let us know. But Shaily, thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. Now you've inspired me. I'm like, should I offer more of these trainings for people? And I'm like, you know what? If they're a developer, they should call you because you have a very easy way to book your trainings on your website. Not something I do every day, but if somebody really wants that help, feel free to give me a ring. And I'm going to leave you on my favorite social media quote. Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it.
So I didn't write this, but I feel like I wish I did. It's about social media is about the people, not about your business, your career, or whatever. Provide for the people, and the people will provide for you.
I love it. It's good advice. All right, we'll see you in the next episode, everyone. See you.
Boom.